So, I have been off for a few weeks working on some other things, including some videos that are just taking forever to finish. It's been a long time in the works. So in the meantime, while I'm finishing those off, I thought I'd jump in with some good old music theory to keep things ticking over in the meantime. Today we are going to talk about open chord voicings and closed chord voicings, what they are and how you can use them in your own compositional practice. Let's hook into it. Open voicings are chords that are spread out over a space larger than an octave. Closed voicings are contained within an octave. In general, open voicings tend to sound more spacious, free, open, and closed voicings tend to sound more dense and compact and closed. I did actually briefly mention these at the end of my last video, but I thought today we would go into a little bit more depth into how they relate to each other and how you can turn your closed voicings into open voicings. When we're introduced to music theory, most of what we look at are closed voicings for chords. So root position or inversions for triads are all in closed voicings. Our sevenths, typically in closed voicings, our sus chords. If we've got added extensions to the middle of the chords rather than extended above, they can also be sitting within that octave. That tends to be how we're introduced to those chords and how we're introduced to using them. Where you level up your harmonic understanding is altering the sound of these same chords by changing the position of the notes and the distribution of these notes. There are two main techniques that we use to turn closed voicings into open voicings. First up, we have the drop 2 technique. So that, as the name suggests, is where we take the second highest note of a chord and drop it down an octave. And the other technique we're going to talk about today is our drop 3 technique. Now that is exactly the same as our drop 2, but rather than dropping the second highest note of the chord, we're going to drop the third highest note instead. We're going to start with some examples for triads first. So if we take our root position C major chord, we've got this closed voicing. If we use our drop 2 technique, we're going to take the second highest note and drop it down an octave and get this. We can do the same for inversions. So if we take this inversion of a D minor triad, we can use our drop 3 technique to take the third highest note, which in this case is actually our lowest note because we only have a 3-note chord. And if we drop that down an octave, interestingly for this one, our notes are still in the same order, but our bottom note is now an octave further down, which does change how it sounds. We do also have the option of extending upwards with these chords. So if we take a G major chord in root position, we're looking at this, we could extend that to upwards instead of down. So if we take that B and move it up an octave, it's going to sound like this. And it's exactly the same if we have a sus chord. So this B flat sus 2, we could take that suspended second, that's C, and move it an octave up, and we get this. Now we've looked at a few examples for triads, let's look at some 4-note chords. So if we had an F add 9, we could do our drop 2 technique and take our A and drop it down an octave to get this. This E dominant 7 chord can have our drop 3 technique moving our G sharp down an octave to get this. And then if we extend upwards in this A minor 7, we can grab that C and move it up an octave to get this. A really classic thing to do with these open voiced chords is turn them into arpeggios. So they're spaced out, you can hear the melody and the movement in the notes, and they're just slightly less standard than your typical closed chord voicings. You can also voice these across multiple instruments, which can be really lovely as well. So the classic thing is having soprano, alto, tenor, bass in vocals. There are a few additional rules if you're going down the traditional route of SATB composition. That's not where we're going today. We're not even going to go into that dark and dingy pool of music theory down there. It's cool, like there's a lot to learn, but that's not what today is. That's not the point of today. Anyway, So you can do it in your vocals, that's the classic thing, have your harmonies spread out across multiple voices. We also get it in string arrangements of songs. You can have a nice spread across your violin, viola, cello, double bass, that sort of stuff. Woodwind also sounds gorgeous. And in a more popular music setting, guitar and piano. We get that quite a bit in contemporary music. But that's a little introduction into the world of open voicings in chords and how they're different to closed voicings. That is not to say that they are better or worse or anything. They are just a different way of going about doing things. And one thing to say is that it's great to combine the two. So having open voicings and closed voicings that play together, as in, one chord is in an open voicing and then the subsequent chord is in a closed voicing, can be gorgeous as well. So it just depends what you're going for, what sort of harmonies you're using, what sort of chords you're using, all of that. But this is a great thing to have up your sleeve in your compositional arsenal, to draw on as a way of leveling up and making your harmonies a little less typical, expected, standard, whatever you want to call it. As always, let me know if you have any questions at all, and I will see you in the next one. Hopefully, won't be too long this time.